force delivered synchronized and layered effects designed to disrupt, degrade, deny, and destroy Iran's ability to conduct and sustain combat operations. On the U.S. side, this marked the culmination of months and in some cases years of deliberate planning and refinement against this particular target set. From precision strikes against key military infrastructure to persistent intelligence and targeting integration to the close coordination of the components across vast distances, this operation again demonstrated America's reach, readiness, and professionalism, and that of our joint united force. It was historic not only in the operational scope, but in the level of joint integration displayed across every element of the joint force. And as I said earlier, this work is just beginning and will continue. So now to talk a little bit about setting the force and setting the theater. On the order of the Secretary of War over the last 30 days to reinforce deterrence and provide the President with credible options.
And again, this is the press conference. Right now it's 4 p.m. Eastern. 4:19 p.m. Eastern.
These movements ensured that U.S. forces remained postured, protected, and ready to respond decisively for any emerging threat. This deployment included thousands of service members from all branches, hundreds of advanced 4th and 5th generation fighters, dozens of refueling tankers, the Lincoln and Ford Carrier Strike Group and their embarked air wings, sustained flow of munitions, fuel, supplies, all supported with command and control, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance network. And the flow of forces continues today. In fact, Admiral Cooper will receive additional forces even today. This rapid buildup of forces demonstrated the joint.
And this will continue 4 to 5 weeks, guys.
Power at the time and place of
We're in war.
Choosing.
United States is in North Iran.
Cases for you. The Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group, which many of you know was down in the Western Hemisphere, redeployed across the Atlantic to set the theater. The ship, her crew, their families, and the entire strike group took a deep breath, and as they always do, began planning to conduct combat operations.
Stuck on a late-night study session? Head over to the dedicated Tutor tab. Just type in any concept your
National Guard operating in Kuwait and Iraq, and Air National Guard units from a variety of states to include Vermont and Virginia. In the case of the Vermont Air National Guard and the 158th Fighter Wing, they were mobilized for Operation Absolute Resolve and then were tasked to take their F-35As across the Atlantic instead of going home to be prepared to support this operation. The same is with our Air National Guard and Air Force Reserve Command tanker and mobility forces who stepped right out of their civilian jobs to deploy and to protect the region. Lastly, I want to highlight the unsung heroes of warfare, our American logisticians and sustainment force, those who quietly work every day behind the scenes to project and sustain America's combat power. Our leaders from World War II were right when they said professionals do logistics. As regional tensions rose, the Joint Force elevated our force protection measures on the order of the Secretary and repositioned discreetly civilians and non-essential personnel designed to ensure the safety and security of our joint force. By the time operations began, only essential forces remained on our bases and in theater, all ready, capable to respond. So now move to H hour. At 3:38 p.m. on Friday, February 27th, the United States Central Command, through the Secretary of War, received the final go order from President Trump. The President directed, and I quote, "Operation Epic Fury is approved. No aborts. Good luck," close quote. In the region, every element of the joint force made their final preparations. Air defense batteries readied themselves, checking their systems to respond to Iranian attacks. Pilots and crews rehearsed their strike packages for the final time. Air crews began loading their final weapons, and 2 carrier strike groups began to move towards their launching points. Across the globe, our operation centers came alive in Tampa, Florida, here at the Pentagon, and of course forward in the Central Command AOR. As always, operational security was paramount as we sought to maintain and sustain the element of surprise. This operation was highly classified so that at H hour, the enemy would see one thing: speed, surprise, and violence of action. The first movers were U.S. Cybercom and U.S. Spacecom, layering non-kinetic effects, disrupting and degrading and blinding Iran's ability to see, communicate, and respond. At H hour, the beginning of major combat operations, 01:15 local Eastern Daylight Time, 9:45 local AM Tehran time, as dawn crept up across the Central Command AOR, the skies surged to life. More than 100 aircraft launched from land, sea, fighters, tankers, airborne early warning, electronic
And
attack,
electronic
bombers
attack,
from the states
bombers,
and unmanned platforms, forming a
single synchronized wave.
This was a daylight strike
daylight
based on a trigger
strike.
event conducted by the
And
Israeli Defense Forces, enabled by the
Defense
U.S.
Forces
intelligence community.
Against
The first shooters at
the
sea were
first
Tomahawks
shooters
unleashed by the United States
unleashed
Navy,
by the
closed in on
United States
Iranian naval
Navy,
forces,
but
and began to conduct strikes
began
across
to
the southern
conduct
flank in Iran.
strikes
On the ground, forces
against
fired
the southern
precision
flank.
standoff weapons,
And
measured,
standoff
deliberate,
weapons,
precise, and lethal. This was a massive, overwhelming attack across all domains of warfare, striking more than 1,000 targets in the first 24 hours. We are now roughly 57 hours into the operation.
57 hours
In the initial
into
phase,
the
CENTCOM's
operation.
focus was systematic targeting of Iranians'
It was
command and control
targeting
infrastructure, naval forces,
Naval
ballistic missile
forces,
sites, and intelligence
and
infrastructure designed to daze and confuse them. Coordinated space and cyber
Coordinated space
operations
and
effectively disrupted
operation,
communications and sensor
communications
networks across
and
the area of
networks,
responsibility, leaving the adversary without the ability to see, coordinate, or respond effectively. The combined impact of these strikes, swift, precise, and overwhelming, has resulted in the establishment of local air superiority. This air superiority will not only enhance the protection of our forces, but also allow them to continue the work over Iran. Over the course of the last 2 days, the Joint Force has launched hundreds of missions from land and sea and delivered tens of thousands of pieces of ordnance. The effort continues to scale. This included American B-2 bombers, which again, similar to Midnight Hammer, flew a 37-hour round-trip sortie from the continental United States, dropping precision, penetrating munitions on Iranian underground facilities across the southern flank and slightly deeper. Additionally, Israel has separately executed hundreds of sorties against hundreds of targets. Beyond Air Force and Navy aircraft strike packages, coordinated salvos of precision standoff weapons from across the region have neutralized hundreds of pre-planned targets.
And so we just listening in there to Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, as well as Air Force General Dan Kane, speaking a bit earlier today, as we are sharing this breaking news here with you, that we are learning that six U.S. service members has been Operation Epic Fury. Also sharing with you here that right now, Secretary of State Marco Rubio is briefing the Gang of Eight there on Capitol Hill on Iran, and we continue to watch this podium here to see if we will get any additional comments from Secretary of State Rubio. We are going to step away for a commercial break. My name is Christy Matino. If you are just tuning in, we will continue those comments from that press conference on the other side. Stay with us.
continue to cover this as the war continues to go on. We hope everyone continues to be safe. But right now, it's during commercial break. I'm relocating.
Of pre-planned targets. As I mentioned earlier, in support of these kinetic operations, U.S. Cybercom and Spacecom have continuously layered effects to disrupt, disorient, and confuse the enemy. I will note that this operation had several combat firsts, which I'll allow at some point in the future Admiral Cooper to talk about since he owns the AOR. While we've prosecuted a relentless offensive campaign, our defense has been equally important. Across the theater, operations have remained steady and disciplined. Once again, our integrated air and missile defense network is performing exactly as it's intended. U.S. Patriot and THAAD batteries, along with ballistic missile defense-capable Navy destroyers, continue to coordinate and execute intercepts with precision and consistency.
As you continue listening in,
I wish that every American could hear the voice communications like I have as these joint operations centers remain calm, focused, and cool while executing under fire over and over again. Collectively, these systems have intercepted hundreds of ballistic missiles targeting U.S. forces, our partners, and regional stability. The threat from one-way attack UAVs has remained persistent. Our systems have proven effective in countering these platforms, engaging targets rapidly. Each intercept represents hundreds of hours of training, readiness, and technology all coming together to work as designed. We will remain vigilant in the counter UAV fight. And the defense of the region is not ours alone. As the threat surged in beside us, air defense batteries in Qatar, the UAE, Kuwait, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia joined the fight, proof positive that years of training, trust, and hard-earned integration pay off. I am aware of the loss of 3 U.S. Air Force F-15Es overnight in the region. I am grateful for the safety of the crews, and we know that this was not from hostile enemy fire. As this matter's under investigation, I'll not comment further on this. Let me close. Operations will remain active across the theater and across the globe. The U.S. forces are postured not only to maintain pressure, but to respond and adapt as required. Operation Epic Fury stands as a reminder of what the United States military uniquely delivers: the ability to project power on a global scale with speed, surprise, precision, and overwhelming force when and where our nation requires it. What we've demonstrated over the past several days reflects years of investment in readiness, joint integration, and professionalism of the joint force. As major combat operations continue across CENTCOM, we remain engaged globally. America's joint force retains the credibility, capacity, and
Pay too much for cable TV when it costs less for Fubo. Get all the channels you want.
or our interests. Understand clearly, we can reach you, we can sustain the fight, and we can scale the fight, and we will prevail. To the American people, your joint force remains steady, frosty, calm, and focused. Your service members are trained, disciplined, and determined. We understand the risks of this mission and the weight of the responsibility that we carry. We also recognize that our families also shoulder the burden at home. You are a part of this too. I am proud today, as I am every day, to stand as a member of American Joint Force. There is no mission too complex, no distance too great, and no adversary too determined for the men and women who wear our nation's uniform. We mourn our fallen, we honor their families, and we continue our mission with focus, unity, and strength. And now I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Megan, go ahead.
Thank you for your time. What percentage of Iranian long straight capabilities are still in the fight? And what is our exit strategy here, and when will it be deployed?
Well, they have long-range strike capabilities, which we are hyper-focused on. The brief we got just this morning, Admiral Cooper knows exactly and precisely what kind of threat matrix he's looking at, the way they might change their techniques and how we adapt to that. So we're making sure the theater commander has absolutely everything he needs. I mean, one of the things the chairman mentioned is for months and months, even before we built up, we ensured that we had maximum defensive capabilities in theater to allow the president the decision space in the future. So even before this buildup in the last 30 days, we discreetly brought defensive assets in to make sure, understanding that there are Iranian capabilities. As far as time frame, I would never hang a time frame from our perspective. The commander-in-chief sets the op tempo and terms of this fight. As I said, it's on his terms. And we'll make sure that Admiral Cooper and his team have everything they need, not just to defend. I mean, the best defense is a good offense. And so we're aggressively pushing into that airspace over that southern flank to ensure that we control it and we destroy anything that moves that would attempt to shoot us. Think of it as shooting the archer instead of the arrows. That's where we want to be. And we have the kind of exquisite intelligence to get over the top, find that and destroy it. It won't happen overnight. This is a big battle space with a lot of capabilities. That's part of the reason why it's such a threat to us. That's why I talk about conventional umbrella to blackmail nuclear ambitions. They were building up this conventional arsenal in order to ensure that no one would ever block them from their ability to get nuclear weapons. So we're very clear-eyed about the nature of this Iranian threat, and we're going to get after it. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for the question. The only thing I'll add is that unlike an operation, a single operation like Midnight Hammer or Absolute Resolve, it'll take some time. That CENTCOM will run will take those things into effect. Admiral Cooper will adjust his plan and fires accordingly to ensure that we're attriting that. He's focused on long-range strike capability coming out of the enemy, and that's a key and essential part of it.
capabilities that still exist from the enemy front?
Yeah, that's what I mean when I say we're still doing BDA. Normally we'd be able to see a singular thing and we'd assess pretty quickly. He's doing offense and assessment simultaneously, so it'll take longer for us to assess than it would in a single operation.
Secretary Hicks, thank you. Reagan Reese with the Daily Caller. 2 questions for you. The president said yesterday in his video message that we will leave Iran when we complete all of our objectives. What are our objectives? And can you share more information on how the soldiers who were killed were killed?
Well, I laid out the objectives, as did the chairman. They're completely nested. I mean, Iran has an ability to project power against us and our allies in ways that we can't tolerate. So whether that's ballistic missiles and drones, so offensive capabilities, effectively their navy, which would attempt to set other terms and impose different costs, drone capabilities, which we laid out there, and ultimately, though, this tying it back to Midnight Hammer, the president has been willing to make a deal. You can't have a nuclear bomb. Radical Islamists can't have a nuclear bomb that they wield against the world. He gave them every single opportunity. Then we precisely took it away. And even then, after that, they didn't have that. They didn't come to the table with a willingness to give it away. So ultimately, those nuclear ambitions, which never ceased, are something that had to be addressed as well. So that's a discrete sense of what's being addressed here to ensure that they can't use that conventional umbrella to...
All right, guys, we are going to step away for a quick 2-minute break. Here's our 2-minute break. So be ready for the quick 2-minute break. We're back. Alright, and then that was our commercial break. Now we are back.
Consistently assess the trajectory of the campaign. Is he on or off trajectory? And then make an ask of the joint force, which will then develop options for consideration by the Secretary and the President to either increase or in some cases decrease the amount of combat capability that we have over there.
I heard the question about 4 weeks. It's the typical NBC sort of gotcha type question. President Trump has all the latitude in the world to talk about how long it may or may not take. 4 weeks, 2 weeks, 6 weeks. It could move up. It could move back. We're going to execute at his command the objectives we've set out to achieve. And what he has shown an ability to do that other presidents can't quite seem to have the aperture to do, well, I mean, Joe Biden didn't even know what he was doing, is to look for opportunities and off-ramps and escalations for the United States that creates new opportunities to execute what we need on our own timeline. So you can play games about 4 weeks, 5 weeks. He has all the latitude, and I'm glad he does, because there's no better communicator than our president expressing those things.
The Daily Mail.
I've been in meetings with the president for the last 2.5 days. We know exactly where his headspace is, and he will communicate as he should exactly what he would like, and we will follow those orders. And I think everything he said on that is right down the middle.
Chairman, did you
absolutely?
have
Yes, right there. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Secretary. I left my hometown of Sakest in Iranian Kurdistan in 1996. Can you promise that I will be able to return home safely this year? And I have a following question too, please.
I appreciate the question. I'm not here to place guarantees on that, but I think the message the president has given has been clear to the people of Iran. This is your moment. The world was seized by these crowds, and then seized by the reality of this regime killing tens of thousands of innocent protesters. So we saw the nature of the. This is their moment to take advantage.
Secretary, you served in Iraq and know that no American soldiers were killed in Kurdistan. The Kurdish people are very pro-American. Will you continue protect Kurdistan and Peshmerga as loyal ally of the United States? Why I'm asking this question? Because now Kurdistan is under attack by Iranian drones and by proxies in Iraq and on the region.
I think I can speak to allies generally in the region who we've been in constant communication with. We have been standing shoulder to shoulder with them, and we appreciate their capabilities. Absolutely. Yes, right here.
Hi, thank you. Cameron Arkin with the Daily Wire. My question is about some of the domestic threats, if any, regarding this right now. Have there been any concerns about Iranian sleeper cells, and kind of what has the Trump administration been doing to kind of monitor these threats?
Across the interagency, in full coordination, of course, we're paying attention to any potentialities there. This is a former regime, a regime that seeks to export that ideology and try to sow terror. We're ready for that. We've seen these types of folks before, and the American people can rest assured that we're vigilant on that.
Right. Secretary, thank you. Kind of follow up on that last question. There was just this what appears to be a terrorist attack in Austin yesterday. How does that change the operation at all? What effect does that have?
It doesn't change the operation at all, and I know the authorities are executing exactly the way they should.
Secretary Higgs, and one for Chairman Keane as well. I understand, to your point here, that you don't want to broadcast everything for our adversaries to hear, but the American people also want to know what they're sending their men and women to war for. Is there a concern of this spiraling into a longer war? And then one for the chairman when you're done.
Did you not hear my remarks? I mean, we're ensuring the mission gets accomplished, but we are very clear-eyed, as the president has been, unlike other presidents, about the foolish policies of the past that recklessly pulled us in to things that were not tethered to actual clear objectives. So we know we have plans, we have generals, we have chairmen, we have commanders, CENTCOM commanders, Admiral Cooper, who's executing very deliberately to ensure outcomes that I laid out are accomplished. But we would never, in front of a press pool, lay out how long that may take. The mission for our warfighters, which is what matters to us, is very, very clear. And they're executing it right now, violently.
And just for the chairman, quickly, I have one for the chairman. You said this is not a one-night operation. It will take time to achieve the goals. What would be the goal line here for you?
I think the Secretary laid out the military objectives, and that's what we execute against is the military objectives.
Last one right here.
Enriched uranium is. Thank you, sir. As you've said, there are a large amount of U.S. service members that are in harm's way right now. What is your prayer for them?
First of all, my prayer for them is that I do pray for them. My wife prays for them. Our family prays for them. Our cabinet prays for them. None of this is done on a whim. Having been in their boots, having been in their shoes, having been in their flight suits, I know we think about them with every decision that we make and every recommendation that we make to the President of the United States. Those recommendations are made prayerfully. And when I pray every day for them and for this mission, I pray simply for the biblical wisdom to see what is right and the courage to do it. It's going to take courage to follow through on this. There's going to be a lot of noise, and we pray for that, and we hope all of you do as well. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
And that was Secretary Hegseth as well as General Kane as they were answering questions from reporters on Iran a bit earlier today. And I wanted to share with you this live look inside Capitol Hill because we've heard from several members of the Trump administration here today, including the president himself this morning. Now, right now, we do have this live feed as Secretary Rubio is meeting with the Gang of Eight. And that podium is set up there in case Secretary Rubio speaks to the media again, but we did just hear from him, and I wanted to quickly share with you what we heard. He's warned that the hardest hits are yet to come for Iran, signaling an intensifying next phase of U.S. military operations and saying the campaign will continue until Tehran's missile and naval capabilities are destroyed. Once again, he was speaking there from the Capitol within the past hour here. And Rubio said Iran has already suffered significant damage, but indicated that more forceful strikes are ahead. We also heard that from President Trump as well. As we step away for commercial break, you'll notice there's a QR code in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen as Bill and Hillary Clinton's deposition videos have now been released. So you can scan that QR code there for Hillary Clinton's, and my producer is going to switch as former President Bill Clinton's video also has been released. If you'd like to watch those, we do have a dedicated YouTube stream. Scan that QR code in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen if you would like to watch those. For now, we're stepping away for a break on Live Now from Fox. We'll be right back.
We'll go on break, guys.
You're watching Live Now from Fox. Welcome back. I am your host, Christy Matino. As we continue to follow the latest there on Capitol Hill, we do have that live look there as Secretary Rubio is meeting with the Gang of Eight, discussing Iran right now. And you can see media waiting outside there to see if we will be getting any additional comments. I also wanted to just quickly share with you some of these social media posts here. If you are just tuning in, we were sharing that the deposition videos from both Bill and Hillary Clinton have been released, and you can scan that QR code in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen if you would like to watch them, because we do have dedicated YouTube streams. This just being released here moments ago here And the Oversight Committee shared this, saying, watch the depositions of President Bill Clinton and Secretary Hillary Clinton in front of the House Oversight Committee as part of our investigation into Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Full 4.5-hour deposition videos in the links below. So you can watch them here because we do have them on Live Now from Fox. We're going to pop down that QR code right now because I also wanted to share this news. We brought you this breaking news here a short time ago. This is from Fox's Bill Melugin, as CENTCOM has announced 6 U.S. service members have now been killed in Operation Epic Fury after the bodies of 2 unaccounted for service members were found in a facility that was struck by Iran during their initial attacks in the region. So some sad news there we wanted to share with you here. Also, Trey Yingst saying the world will be a safer place when we're done with this operation. That's according to Secretary of State Marco Rubio, as again, we did hear from him a short time ago on Capitol Hill. All right, we do have to take our final break because I will be handing off to my colleague, Andy Mack. Stay with us here on Live Now from Fox. My name is Christy Matino. We're back in 2 minutes.
All right, welcome back in here to Live Now from Fox. A live look there in Washington, D.C. A snowy day here to start a new week. I'm Andy Mack now here in the anchor chair as we continue to dive into the latest. Some 48 hours since this Operation Epic Fury underway and the attack on Iran and the White House. The Secretary of State Marco Rubio sharing some clarity into exactly why this operation was necessary. You can see there on your screen the Gang of 8 being briefed right now by different military leaders, including the Department of Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. So hopefully we'll get some comments from people on the outside of this meeting there on Capitol Hill here in short order, as Secretary Rubio said earlier as he was heading into this meeting, saying, quote, the objectives of this operation are to destroy their ballistic missile capability and make sure they can't rebuild it, make sure they can't hide behind that to have a nuclear program. They also noted that the hardest hits are yet to come, so we'll soon see what that will entail. Earlier on today, President Trump at an event, an alternative event, saying that the capability to go far longer, so this could stretch 4 to 5 weeks. So interesting to note about that. We're also learning new information right now about what's going on in Iran, saying the death toll now rising. Central Command posting this, saying 6 U.S. service members have been killed in action. The U.S. forces recently recovered the remains of 2 previously unaccounted for service members from a facility that was struck during Iran's initial attacks in the region. Major combat operations will continue. The identities of the fallen are being withheld until 24 hours after next of kin they are notified. So that potentially is something we're going to learn the identities in the coming days of exactly who those 6 service members are. Again, this is a live picture there, the Gang of 8 being briefed as we talk about it, the worth, the value of American lives, as President Trump did not necessarily rule out boots on the ground. Obviously, they're working and doing everything they can to avoid that possibility. But right now, obviously, strikes underway. The United States, Israel continue to barrage. We saw retaliatory counterattack strikes from Iran as well. So a live look there in Tel Aviv this Monday as we are approaching 5 o'clock on the East Coast. And just to know what we're expecting to hear from that Gang of 8 meeting going into it, Secretary of State Marco Rubio alluding to the fact that they're talking about this operation and the motive behind it. You can see
we're going to
talking about the United States conducting an operation to eliminate threats of Iran's short-range ballistic missiles and the threat posed by the Navy, particularly the naval assets. That's what we're focused on doing right now. It's done quite successfully. I'll leave it to the Pentagon and the Department of War to discuss the tactics behind that and the progress that's being made. That is clear objective of this mission, saying regime change is not a component to this.
All right.
You're also hearing from Reuters reporter.
We went to the final 2-minute break of this hour. We'll be back around. Okay, let's end here soon. 2-minute break. And that was the final 2-minute break of the hour.
Here at home. All right, we'll begin with Lisa Evers with the latest out of Iran tonight. Lisa.
Well, Stephen, Natasha, we're following this very closely here in the newsroom. Joint Chiefs Chairman Dan Kane warned there could be casualties as the war with Iran intensifies. And we just learned of 2 more. U.S. Central Command confirming 2 additional service members were killed in action as Iran retaliated by bombing American facilities. That brings the total number of American lives lost to 6. Explosions could be seen throughout Tehran from the bombs dropped by American and Israeli planes in Iran's capital city. Now 6 U.S. service members have been killed in the escalating conflict. Iranian officials say at least 555 people have been killed there since the bombing started on Saturday. Iran's top leadership, 49 leaders, were wiped out. That mission was expected to take weeks, but was done in days, says President Trump.
and Iran.
I'll visualize the logic to help you truly understand.
That's how you do it.
It's like having a pro teacher in your pocket, right by your side, anytime, anywhere.
Our country itself would be under threat, and it was very nearly under threat.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio addressed reporters just a short time ago, underscoring the president's assertion that immediate military action was necessary.
Come a point where they have so many conventional missiles, so many drones, and it can inflict so much damage that no one can do anything about their nuclear program.
Tasha, as you mentioned at the top, the president says the war could go on for 4 or 5 weeks, maybe longer. His administration will go before Congress tomorrow in what could be a contentious hearing. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries is calling for a resolution that would require congressional approval for the Iran military campaign to continue. That's the latest from the newsroom. Back to you.
All right, Lisa, thank you so much. Well, the war in the Middle East is prompting security concerns back here at home.
All right, and while officials say there are no credible threats, the NYPD says it's stepping up patrols at sensitive locations.
Fox 8's Haley Fixler is live in Times Square with that part of the story. Haley.
Well, Steve, Natasha, places like Times Square, these are places that officials say they're keeping extra watch on. So places that draw in a lot of people, as well as diplomatic and religious sites, they're going to have more security and more patrols for the time being. So this is what we learned. We spoke with the former senior director of counterterrorism at the National Security Council today, and he says this conflict escalated very quickly. And unlike past confrontations, Iran is not showing any restraint this time, and he believes that further escalation is likely. So that could mean terrorist attacks abroad, especially in the Middle East or in Europe, or even cyber attacks. Now, he thinks that attacks inside of the U.S., they're unlikely because of a limited number of Iranian operatives here. But cyber attacks, that's a real concern. Take a listen.
Would they up the ante and try to launch attacks against malware attacks against critical infrastructure that would not only destroy data on computers in these energy companies, power companies, telecommunication companies, but also interfere with the operations of them. And we don't know if they have the sort of access for those types of cyber attacks, because you have to get inside these digital networks. But it might be something they're thinking about or had been planning for in a moment like this, where the regime is at risk and is facing a serious crisis. And
all right, so what should you be doing? Well, officials say right now you should just be living your lives, just staying extra vigilant. So tonight marks the start of the Jewish holiday of Purim, and all events, they're going on as scheduled. But of course, rabbis and event organizers, they are taking precautions.
Security services, CSI, the CSS, the police, of course, are in touch, yeah. They send out briefings, things to be cautious of, suspicious people, people lingering, things like that is where they'll say, be more vigilant. Someone you don't recognize, be more thoughtful. I would say not only are we not afraid, but we're going to do it stronger and better and with more joy, with more happiness, because that's really the fight.
All right, officials, they are really urging everyone to just stay vigilant, to stay aware of your surroundings, of course, and if you see something, to say something. 5 in Times Square. Natasha, back to you.
All right, Haley, thanks so much. Also developing on Long Island, Nassau County officials reassuring people today that law enforcement is taking the threat of a possible terror attack very seriously. They say that they've been talking with the NYPD and FBI every day. They're also concerned about a possible lone wolf and are asking people to call authorities if they see anything suspicious.
We went out and did over 1,500 critical infrastructure visits this weekend alone. You will see a large presence of the police department out there. You will see a helicopter up in the air over routine areas, just being proactively out there looking for any kind of leads or any intel that is out there.
NASA officials are also concerned about cyber attacks, and they're asking you not to open anything suspicious.
Well, I can stay up to date on the situation unfolding.
Listening in there to our Fox 5 team, diving into the latest and on high alert with everything going on in the world with that Operation Epic Fury there in Iran. And also we are learning more of the details about what's going on in Austin, Texas. That mass shooting that unfolded on their entertainment district, their 6th Street over the weekend, killing 2 people, injuring more than a dozen others. Obviously concerned about that. Here on Live Now from Fox saying there was a nexus of terrorism involved with that. So the FBI, Austin police are looking into exactly what's going on with this there in the Lone Star State. Again, I do want to put up this here on Live Now from Fox from Washington, D.C. A Gang of 8 meeting underway. You can see the media milling about as the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, talks to some of the top Democrats, the top Republicans on Capitol Hill about exactly what's going on. And going into this meeting, he clarified some of what the objective is from the White House's perspective. And it's not necessarily about regime change. It's about taking out ballistic missile sites and also weakening their nuclear capabilities in Tehran and that Middle East country. All right, I'm Andy Mack. We're going to watch this here all night, Live Now from Fox. Let's slide away for a quick 2-minute break. Here to Live Now from Fox. I am Andy Mack. We are still watching and waiting for any lawmakers to leave that Gang of 8 meeting as the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, will be briefing the top Democrats and Republicans on Capitol Hill about that Operation Epic Fury into Iran. We got some new information from the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth earlier on today saying that this will not be an extended one, reiterating that time and time again. But a live look right there on Capitol Hill as this briefing underway. The media milling about right now, and we're hearing new information today about exactly what's going on, but also about concerns with oil and that major energy artery, the Strait of Hormuz. You can see from Reuters, Phil Stewart saying the United States will take action to mitigate those rising energy prices due to a spike in the price of oil caused by the Iran conflict. He said they're going to be speaking with Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Energy Secretary Chris Wright announced the plans on Tuesday, saying they're rolling out phases to try to mitigate against what we anticipated could be an issue. So looking into that possibility, we'll see if there's any conversations about that. The Strait of Hormuz there, right there, a channel, a narrow waterway between Iran and Oman that is so very critical to oil, although very few barrels get to the United States, it is still having shockwaves, ripple effects around the country. And that's what I want to talk about here next on Live Now from Fox, about exactly what we're watching and monitoring there with those concerns over oil prices spiking as oil markets are on edge. Let's take you out to Lauren Simonetti with this report.
Analysts are closely watching the Strait of Hormuz, which accounts for almost 30% of global oil transit. Iran has threatened to close the strait amid the ongoing conflict with the U.S.
It's something that we're very focused on militarily. So we're talking about a real kind of choke point out there.
Experts say the United States, now the world's leading oil producer, will not be heavily impacted as it has achieved record production.
We can produce it here safer and more reliably than any other place in the world. And that has provided President Trump a tremendous amount of foreign policy flexibility.
But problems in the strait would affect China. Beijing bought more than 80% of Iran's oil exports in 2025, leading China's foreign minister to call for an immediate ceasefire.
China has diversified supplies, so it gets a lot from Russia. But remember, it's also lost its Venezuelan oil. You will see real problems in about 2 months in China if this situation continues.
President Trump has been vague about a timeline when it comes to Iran.
We're already substantially ahead of our time projections, but whatever the time is, it's okay. Right from the beginning, we projected 4 to 5 weeks, but we have capability to go far longer than that.
Trump is scheduled to meet with President Xi in China at the end of the month.
There's a number of things that could happen in the next weeks that could very well derail that meeting in Beijing.
Higher oil prices would put upward pressure on inflation, which could keep the Federal Reserve from cutting interest rates. In New York, Lauren Simonetti, Fox Business.
All right, thank you so much. And that is obviously such a very important, the oil and energy sector to the global world economy. Almost 30% of the global oil there going through the Strait of Hormuz. And we're following the latest right now about that, as it would be very, very difficult to actually close, a matter of fact, but there could be deterrence in terms of mines, in terms of aerial assets for Iran over that region that would cause some complications with the Strait of Hormuz. Again, a live look right there. The Gang of Eight meeting underway right now, so we'll see what's coming from it. But I also want to put in some new reporting from Phil Stewart here from Reuters, talking about saying that the Strait of Hormuz is now officially closed. This is what he is saying on social media, saying that Iran will fire on any ship trying to pass. A senior official in Iran's Revolutionary Guard is being quoted saying in Iran's media that, quote, "The Strait of Hormuz is closed. If anyone tries to pass, the heroes of the Revolutionary Guard and the regular Navy will set those ships ablaze." They said, as the strait is the world's most vital oil export route, which connects the biggest Gulf oil producers such as Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, and the United Arab Emirates, as well as the Gulf of Oman and the Arabian Sea. So potentially, as we know, this is not necessarily a small channel, but a very close area, a choke point, if you will. Well, they are threatening to fire upon any ship that does pass through that region, which complicates it. And obviously, different vessels, they are very big and potentially dangerous in that region. So likely to deter many individuals, many companies, nations from moving through that. So we'll see what comes of it. We'll see if that has any impacts. The White House administration saying they're going to try to mitigate it. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, Energy Secretary Chris Wright working through that. They'll announce the program tomorrow. Let's take you, though, out right now to Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, as he was heading into this Gang of Eight meeting, talking about this, taking questions, fielding questions from reporters about this Operation Epic Fury.
To the purpose. The purpose of this is to destroy that missile capability. Why does Iran want that ballistic missile capability? What they are trying to do, and have been trying to do for a very long time, is build a conventional weapons capability as a shield where they can hide behind. Meaning, there would come a point where they have so many conventional missiles, so many drones, and it can inflict so much damage that no one can do anything about their nuclear program. That is what they were trying to do, is put themselves in a place of immunity where the damage they could inflict on the region would be so high that no one can do anything about their nuclear program or their nuclear ambitions. They are producing, by some estimates, over 100 of these missiles a month. Compare that to the 6 or 7 interceptors that can be built a month. They can build 100 of these a month, not to mention the thousands of one-way attack drones that they also have. They've been doing this for a very long time, and by the way, they've been doing it under sanction. You see the attacks they're conducting right now? They're attacking airports, they're attacking hotels, they're hitting not just military bases, they're attacking our embassies directly, they're attacking facilities that have nothing to do with war or with military, and that's a weakened Iran. That's in Iran despite years of sanction. Imagine a year from now or a year and a half from now the capabilities they would have to inflict damage on us. It's an unacceptable risk, especially in the hands of a regime that's run by radical clerics. The Ayatollah was a radical cleric. That entire regime is led by radical clerics who don't make geopolitical decisions. They make decisions on the basis of theology, their view of theology, which is an apocalyptic one. That has to be taken very seriously as well. So that was the purpose for what this operation is all about. That's what it's focused on. As the president said earlier today, it is on or ahead of schedule. I will defer to the Department of War to discuss the progress being made at a tactical level, but it was the right decision and an important decision for the safety and security of the world.
Does Congress have to weigh in? Is the president declaring war, and does Congress have to weigh in? And was there an imminent threat? Did you tell lawmakers that there was an imminent threat?
There absolutely was an imminent threat, and the imminent threat was that we knew that if Iran was attacked, and we believed they would be attacked, that they would immediately come after us. And we were not going to sit there and absorb a blow before we responded, because the Department of War assessed that if we did that, if we waited for them to hit us first after they were attacked, and by someone else, Israel attacked them, they hit us first, and we waited for them to hit us, we would suffer more casualties and more deaths. We went proactively in a defensive way to prevent them from inflicting higher damage. Had we not done so, there would have been hearings on Capitol Hill about how we knew that this was going to happen, and we didn't act preemptively to prevent more casualties and more loss of life.
Was forced to strike because of an impending Israeli action?
No, first of all, two things I would say. Number one is, no matter what, ultimately this operation needed to happen. That's the question of why now. But this operation needed to happen because Iran in about a year or a year and a half would cross the line of immunity, meaning they would have so many short-range missiles, so many drones, that no one could do anything about it because they could hold the whole world hostage. Look at the damage they're doing now. And this is a weakened Iran. Imagine a year from now. So that had to happen. Obviously, we were aware of Israeli intentions and understood what that would mean for us, and we had to be prepared to act as a result of it. But this had to happen no matter what.
Secretary, President Trump said overnight that his top choices to now run Iran were killed in the strikes. Does the United States have a firm plan for how they intend to handle this power vacuum in Iran to ensure that an Irish hardliner does not take power?
So two things can be true. Number one is our mission and our focus is the destruction of their ballistic missile capabilities and their ability to manufacture them, as well as the threat posed by their Navy to global shipping. That's our objective. That said, we would not mind, we would not be heartbroken, and we hope that the Iranian people can overthrow this government and establish a new future for that country. We would love for that to be possible. But the objective of this mission is the destruction of their ballistic missile capabilities and of their naval capabilities.
Yeah. So are you saying, based on that, are you saying that there is no responsibility, no plan for the U.S. to at least play a role in whatever government comes next?
We might. We'll see how circumstances play out. Repeatedly for years. The leadership of that country does not reflect the people of Iran, and I think that's been pretty apparent in the protests that you've seen. If there's something we can do to help them down the road, we'd obviously be open to it, but that's not the objective. The objective of this mission is the destruction of their ballistic missile capabilities.
Regime change has not gone well for the United States.
The what now?
Regime change has not gone well for the United States for many, many decades. How do you assure the American public that things will not get worse for the next regime that comes in there and replaces the
we would love to see this regime be replaced. And ultimately, as the president has said, he calls... No, but let me finish my answer. As the president has said, he would love for the people of Iran to use this as an opportunity to rise up and remove these leaders. They've been wanting to remove them from a long time. We've seen successive waves of protests, and we've seen them slaughter people. okay? But the objective of this mission is to make sure they don't have these weapons that can threaten us and our allies in the region. That's why we're doing what we're doing now. And while we would love to see a new regime, the bottom line is no matter who governs that country a year from now, they're not going to have these ballistic missiles and they're not going to have these drones to threaten us. That's the objective of this mission, is to deny them the ability to use ballistic missiles to threaten their neighbors, to threaten our bases, to threaten our presence in the region, and ultimately as a shield behind which they can do whatever they want with their nuclear weapons ambition. We were not going to let them hide behind that, and that's why this was such a critical mission to undertake now while they were at their weakest point, and not a year from now where they could inflict even more damage and perhaps already be behind that point of immunity. Go right here behind. Go ahead, you and then you. Yes.
Your critics in Congress have said that they should have a role, they should be able to weigh in here, and there are going to be war powers resolutions votes in Congress later this week. Why not notify Congress ahead of this and just Congress?
Well, we did. We notified Congress. I mean, we notified the Gang of Eight. We notified congressional leadership. There's no law that requires us to do that. The law says we have to notify them 48 hours after beginning hostilities. We've done that. I think the notification went today. But we did notify members of Congress in advance. But we can't notify 535 members of Congress. And well, the Congress can vote on whatever they want, but there's no law that requires us to do that. And I want to say something because I see people on TV. Look, that's fine. If they want to take a war powers vote, they can do that. They've done that. They've done that a bunch of times. But there's no, people keep saying that there's no law that requires the president to have done anything with regards to this. To begin with, no presidential administration has ever accepted the War Powers Act as constitutional. Not Republican presidents, not Democratic presidents. That said, we have followed the notification at 48 hours. We're here today. I've done more Gang of Eight briefings than I got in the 4 years that Biden was president and I was a member of the Gang of Eight. All of that said, we've complied with the law 100%, and we're going to continue to comply with it. We've done the notification, and we officially to Congress, but we did notify members of Congress. We just can't notify 535 people. That's not possible, but we did the Gang of Eight twice. I briefed them last week, and then I called them the night before the operation.
Can you tell us what you know of this administration about striking a building in southern Iran? The Iranians are saying that the school was
Yeah, I've seen those reports. I would refer you, not because I'm not trying to answer your question, but I don't want to get it wrong. The Department of War would be investigating that if that was our strike, and I would refer your question to them, and I'll make sure they're aware that you have that question. But we'd like to know. Well, clearly the United States would not deliberately target a school. Our objectives are missiles, both the ability to manufacture them and the ability to launch them, and the one-way attract drones. That's what would be our focus, and that's what we would be focused on. We would have no interest and, frankly, no incentive to target.
Just listening in there to this on Live Now from Fox, it appears that the Gang of Eight meeting has concluded. We're seeing live the Senator Chuck Schumer walking to the mics. Let's listen in.
Questions were asked. I found their answers completely and totally insufficient. In fact, at least to me, that briefing raised many more questions than it answered.
What is the end game? What is the end game?
Any information about the treaty?
All right, a quick comment there from the Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, the Democrat from New York, saying it was insufficient, the information that was provided by some of the members there, including Secretary of State Marco Rubio. We'll see if anyone else walks out, because you can see just the amount of media on hand for this, curious about what is actually going on there. And going into the meeting, we heard from Rubio talking about how they felt it was insufficient, or saying that they had some clarification on the objective of what's going on, saying taking out those ballistic missile sites were the number one, obviously eliminating any possibility of nuclear capabilities. They said regime change was not the initial goal or objective or motive behind this. So obviously some very quick comments there from Chuck Schumer. We could see from other Democrats, other Republicans, the Gang of Eight meeting, top Democrats, top Republicans from both the House and the Senate, including Schumer. We know Senate Majority Leader John Thune also there, Hakeem Jeffries, Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, also Tom Cotton, Mark Warner, the Representatives Crawford and Holmes there also, and Hines also inside of this meeting. So we'll see what comes out of it. But Schumer walking out saying it was insufficient what information he was provided about what's going on there, the reasoning behind this, as we are now some 48 hours into this Operation Epic Fury as it was unfolding early Saturday morning. And also Secretary of State Marco Rubio saying the hardest hits are yet to come. So we'll see what happens with this. But we do know that the military has said that they've struck over 1,200 targets in Iran since the operation started on Saturday. So we're following it here. We'll see if we have any more comments. We're going to speak to different experts about exactly what's unfolding because the strikes on Iran and also response from Iran about what's going on. A live look right there in Tel Aviv, in Israel here as it's all just past the midnight into the early morning hours, about 12:30 or so local time in Israel right now as a counter response, plenty unfolding. President Trump saying that this could last 4 to 5 weeks, prolonged in tenure. So we'll see if any more comments come from the Gang of Eight, but for the time being, let's line away for a quick 2-minute timeout. Back in here too, live now from Fox. I am Andy Mack, continuing to watch everything unfold in the Middle East. 48 hours into this operation against Iran, we're watching and waiting potentially from comments from other lawmakers. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer is saying the information coming from Secretary of State Marco Rubio was insufficient related to what's going on there and exactly the objectives the White House, President Trump, is unfolding right there, saying regime change is not the main objective, saying those ballistic missile sites and incapacitating those nuclear capabilities or motivations are the main point of this, saying this was a preemptive strike, saying there was an imminent threat. Let's be joined right now by Senior Research Fellow with the Foundation for Defense of Democracy's friend of the program, Joe Truzman. Thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox. And I'm going to hold on real quick because I think I just see someone else stepping up. At the Gang of Eight meeting, you can see reporters following out different lawmakers at this as the briefing kind of underway, but now ending. All right, Joe, I'm going to bring you in here now because Secretary of State Marco Rubio saying the objectives are those ballistic missile sites, limiting the nuclear capabilities. So far from what you're seeing, is the objective being accomplished?
Andy, always a pleasure to be on. I think so, but I think we all should recognize we're just a few days into the war, into this conflict. So something like this takes time. And if we recall, last year in June, the Turkey war, it took the Israelis quite some time, including help from the United States, to take down
Alright, we are going to continue with this war right now. We're listening to this right now, and we're still listening to Live and Now from Fox. My name is Curly, and I'm still covering this war. I hope this war doesn't escalate, but right now it seems like it's possible to go into a 4-5 week war. That's how it's looking. Let's watch this war continue to unfold every day so far. Here we go back to the war.
7 days before the operation Epic Fury began, I was satisfied at that time. I had, as I can speak for myself, as the leader of the legislative branch, the Speaker of the House, I had multiple follow-ups with the Secretary of State. I spoke with the President about it multiple times, and that was in advance of the operation, and we knew what was happening. I think there are two critical points that I just want to emphasize, the non-classified summary of what has happened here. First of all, to me, the most critical point is that this was a defensive measure, a defensive operation. And why is that? I took some notes, and this is not classified, so I'll tell you what I think is important. Israel was determined to act in their own defense here, with or without American support. Why? Because Israel faced what they deemed to be an existential threat. Iran was building missiles at a radical and a rapid clip to the point where our allies in the region could not keep up. As you know, Iran has long vowed to take out Israel, wipe it off the map, and they have long seen that as a critical threat to their very existence. Because Israel was determined to act with or without the U.S., our commander-in-chief and the administration and the officials I just named had a very difficult decision to make. They had to evaluate the threats to the U.S., to our troops, to our installations, to our assets in the region and beyond. And they determined, because of the exquisite intelligence that we had, that if Israel fired upon Iran and took action against Iran to take out the missiles, then they would have immediately retaliated against U.S. personnel and assets. We have troops in harm's way, and we have many Americans in the region, and that was of great concern. If we had waited for all of those eventualities to take place, inaction on our part could have been devastating. We don't know at what magnitude, but you can assume, because it is common sense, that if Iran had begun to fire all of their missile arsenal, short and mid-range missiles at our personnel and our assets and our installations, we would have suffered staggering losses. And if we had waited to respond before acting first, then those losses would have been far greater than if we had done what we did. That was their decision. I can guarantee you this: if we had not acted, if the president, the commander-in-chief, had not acted as he did, those same officials would have been hauled in here by members of Congress and asked them why in the world they waited if they had exquisite intelligence, knowing that that would happen, that we would suffer such staggering losses. Why did they not act to prevent it? So I am convinced that they did the right thing. There's another critical point. What were the objectives? The objectives for our Operation Epic Fury, I am convinced, because I've now been to multiple briefings and I've understood the point of this, the objective was not regime change. The objective was to take out those missiles, the short and mid-range missiles, and their ability to produce them. We did that. That was objective number one. Objective number two was to eliminate their naval capabilities, destroy those and the missiles. And we are well on our way to accomplishing that mission. That is why I think the president has said, in his own words, the commander-in-chief has said this is going to be a